Hey folks, how's it going? This is Watch, and for the past couple of days, I've been really busy in testing out the two most popular and most anticipated phablet phones of the year. I'm talking about the Apple iPhone 6s Plus and the Samsung Galaxy Note 5. Now, we've actually done a lot of content already comparing the battery life, the cameras, the internal speed performance of these two smartphones, so definitely check out those videos if you haven't already. But here we're going to talk about some of the unique aspects about both of these two smartphones in terms of what they have to offer and some of the other things that we didn't mention in those other dedicated comparison videos. So if you want kind of an all-encompassing comparison between these two phablet devices to figure out which one is going to be best suited towards your needs, stay tuned and let's get right into it. Now, when you look at these two large format smartphones side by side, you'll notice that in terms of a dimensional standpoint, the iPhone 6s Plus is a little bit wider and taller than the Galaxy Note 5, and you can see the dimensional differences right in front of you. Interestingly, however, the Samsung actually has a slightly larger display size of about 5.7 inches versus about 5.5 inches on the 6s Plus, and that will give the Note 5 a slightly larger body to screen ratio. You can see that the bezels are a little bit thinner, about 75.9% versus about 67.7% on the iPhone. Now, the 6s Plus is slightly thinner than the Note 5, but the Note 5 is lighter, measuring around 171 grams versus about 192 grams, and you can definitely feel that weight difference when you're holding both phones in your hand. Now, in terms of the build quality itself, I think they're both on par with each other. They're using a mixture of different build materials. The iPhone is exclusively made out of 7000 series aluminum, which is supposedly a lot stronger and more rigid and hopefully less bendable than the previous generation 6 Plus. And the aluminum construction on the Note 5 is really nice, but it actually has quite a lot of glass. In fact, the rear of the device is covered entirely in glass, and that's great in terms of durability and scratch resistance, but alongside that, it's kind of a fingerprint magnet as well. Moving forward, both devices have improved fingerprint scanners embedded in the home button, and they're both on par with each other in terms of speed and response time. Now, ergonomically, I don't think the phablet devices are all that ergonomic to begin with, but both of these two phones are fairly manageable for people that have medium to large size hands. And I think both of these devices will fit without any major hiccups in most people's pockets, so they're kind of a manageable size if you want that large display size, which a lot of people do want. And let's talk about the displays right now. You are looking at a pretty big difference in terms of resolution. You have 2560 by 1440 on the Note 5 versus we still have a 1920 by 1080 display that we encountered in the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, in terms of the PPI count, you're looking at 518 on the Note 5 and about 401 on the iPhone. Now, there's nothing wrong with full HD displays, but I think these days at this kind of display size, Apple should have put in a quad HD display. I'm sure they're going to save that for the next iPhone 7 Plus or whatever they're going to make. But in terms of the actual display quality itself, both of them are really fantastic. Now, the Super AMOLED display, to my eye, looks a little bit more vibrant in terms of saturation and things like that, but the IPS display on the iPhone is also quite beautiful in terms of its color rendition. But I do like the black levels better on an organic LED display because they can actively turn off those darker regions compared to an IPS LED backlit display. Now, one highlight of the iPhone 6s Plus is the fact that it's a little bit more brighter when you're using it in outdoor or brightly lit conditions. The Note 5 isn't bad at all, very legible, but I still think when you're under harsh direct sunlight, the 6s Plus is a little bit more luminous than the Note 5 at this point. Now, moving on, let's actually take a listen to the external speakers on these two smartphones to see which one sounds the best. Now, the one big feature of the new iPhone 6s and 6s Plus is that 3D touch technology. Very similar stuff that we found on the new trackpads on the new MacBooks and indeed the Apple Watch. So basically, you have a series of microscopic sensors that actually measure the distance from the surface glass to the display panel and essentially measure the amount of force that you're putting into each of your touch commands. Now, what you can do with this based on the new iOS 9 platform is enable second and third click functionality in a touch screen screen display. So with that, you can go to your favorite applications such as Messages or email, and basically force click on the icon, and you can send out a message or do specific things related to that application without having to actually go into it, hopefully increasing efficiency in some ways. You can also do something known as a peek and pop gesture, so you can go to an email, and let's say you want a preview of that, you can force touch on that and get a little preview of it, and if you keep on adding pressure, you'll eventually see that email pop right at you, and you're directly into that main email message, and you can reply back or do whatever you want. Now, the cool thing about the 3D touch technology is that they've integrated the taptic feedback engine, so you actually feel a little vibration when you enable a 3D touch command, kind of like a haptic feedback system we encountered with the Apple Watch and indeed the new MacBooks. Now, the real question I have is this 3D technology really worthwhile and meaningful to upgrade to if you're coming from an older generation iPhone? And based on my personal usage after using the new iPhones for a couple of days now, I would say that it's probably not that useful overall. I've found myself using it on occasion, but it's not going to change the way you use your smartphone or really do anything that revolutionary. So it's kind of a side feature that might mature into something significant if developers get behind it, but at this point, it's just a minor side feature that has some potential for growth. Now, the recipe of the Galaxy Note 5 hasn't really changed much from the original Note series of devices. Basically, for anybody that wants a little bit more precision into using their smartphone, the stylus is a great option in order to take notes and to copy and paste certain segments, and there's a lot of functionality that Samsung adds every year to make things as useful as possible. And I think the stylus becomes pretty useful if you want to use the phone for multitasking purposes, either in the pop-up mode or in the window mode. And more than anything, I think the Note 5 has always appealed to people that want a little miniature computer that has plenty of internal capabilities as well as software capabilities to get a lot of work done and to have as many features as possible. Now, internally, the iPhone 6s Plus is using the new Apple A9 architecture. It's basically a dual-core chip clocked about 1.8 gigahertz. It has 2 gigabytes of RAM, which is now confirmed, so double the amount of RAM as the previous generation. And in terms of graphics, they've definitely upped the graphics several times over compared to the previous iPhone, using the PowerVR GT7600, which is a 6-core graphics processing unit. And looking at the Note 5, we're using a very similar, in fact, the exact same architecture as we saw in the Samsung Galaxy S6. So we're using the Exynos 7420 chip, which is comprised of 2 quad-core processors, essentially giving us an 8-core chip, and it's using 4 gigabytes of RAM, so double the amount of RAM compared to the iPhone. And besides the raw specifications, if you watched our recent video where we did a head-to-head speed test comparison and did some benchmarking, you'll find out that both these two phones are fairly similar. Looking at the Geekbench results over here, in terms of the single-core capabilities, the new A9 chip on the iPhone is really a beast, beating the Note 5, but in terms of the multi-core performance, the Note 5 does edge up the iPhone, but from a very, very slight margin, and the results are reflected on the Antutu benchmark. Now, in terms of the GPU units, the iPhone is slightly faster than the Note 5, but in terms of load times and using the phone on a day-to-day basis, opening up different applications, they're more or less on par with each other, and you're not going to notice a massive difference in reality. Moving right along, and let's talk about connectivity. Both of these two smartphones have the capabilities for both N and AC dual-band Wi-Fi capabilities, which is excellent. Both have Bluetooth 4.0 standards, GPS, NFC, although the iPhone 6s Plus is limited. NFC capabilities are specifically tied down to Apple Pay-based applications versus the Samsung is universal standard for NFC. And the cool thing about the Samsung, it also has a heart rate monitor at the back, so you can use it in conjunction with the S Health app if you want to measure your heart rate and work out with your phone. And when we move on and talk about the battery performance of both these two smartphones, in terms of capacity, the Note 5 is just around 3,000 milliamp hours versus the iPhone 6s Plus. As we just recently learned, it has a slightly smaller battery than the previous generation iPhone 6 Plus, about 2750 milliamp hours. And the thing about the new iPhones, they've slightly improved the battery performance from the previous generation. And in fact, based on my personal test, I generally got better battery life from an everyday use standpoint on the iPhone 6s Plus compared to my Note 5. 5, and that was my personal experience. Now, if you do things like Geekbench, the battery tests that we did on our dedicated video, you'll actually find that the Note 5 actually edges up the 6S Plus by a 10 to 15% margin, which is definitely fairly impressive to see. But in reality, I think both these two phones are going to deliver fairly good battery life, and you're not going to have a problem with them in getting throughout the day, even if you're a heavy-duty user. Now, one thing I should mention in terms of charge time, the iPhone 6S Plus does take a little bit longer to charge, especially if you're using just the 1 amp charger. But even if you're using an iPad charger, it's still going to take maybe about 20 minutes more than what I found when using the fast charge capabilities of the Note 5. Plus, you can also do wireless fast charging capabilities on the Note 5. Unfortunately, there are no standards for wireless charging on the iPhones at this stage of the game. Now, last but not least, and perhaps even a deciding factor for some of you guys out there, is going to be the camera performance on these two smartphones. Like we mentioned before, definitely check out the dedicated camera test video where we shot the video in 4K, and you can view it in 4K to get the best quality possible. But I would say from a low light standpoint, the iPhone's rear-facing camera is a little bit better, gives you a little bit more information in terms of shadow detail, and a little bit less noise as well. So it's a little bit more of a versatile camera in terms of low light capabilities, but in terms of sheer sharpness and color rendition, the Note 5 has an absolutely sensational camera. Huge fan of it, both in terms of videos and photos. And when it comes to the front-facing side, both of them are 5 megapixels, but again, you're going to have a little bit better video quality because you have quad HD resolution for front-facing side on the Note 5, as well as a much wider field of view as you can take a look from the side-by-side comparison. So generally speaking, it's great to see 12 megapixel stills and 4K video and 240 frames per second slow motion mode on the new iPhone 6S Plus. And for people making the argument that the Note 5 has a much better camera than the iPhone 6S Plus, should definitely check out that camera comparison video on these two smartphones on the channel and basically see how amazing both cameras really are. But really, other than that, guys, that's really it. Definitely let me know in the comment section down below on which phablet smartphone is most appealing to you guys personally. Definitely love to hear all your thoughts and opinions. Give us a like if you like this video, and check out some of those dedicated comparison videos that we talked about in this video. Find those things in the description down below. But really, other than that, guys, thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.